Welcome to our work session. We're just going to begin with the Pledge of
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So welcome everyone, we're all here tonight. We're going to, the work session tonight is to discuss our district goals for the 2019-2020 school year, as well as our board goals. And we'll see how much we can get done tonight. So first is building our vision together. And I thought this could just be kind of a little discussion on what we've accomplished so far, one specific to our strategic coherence plan. We are beginning year 4, yes, in our 5-year plan. And where we're going, what's next. And also we have goals that we sometimes target that are outside of the SCP, that sometimes from the previous year need to continue into another year, or there could be things outside of that that we may come up with this evening in our discussion that we want to focus on outside of the SCP in addition to it. So we can start with Michelle. You can give us a little recap. Yeah.
Dr. Bosch and I are going to do this together.
Oh, perfect.
So she's
Great.
not
Thank
alone. She's going to take us back in history where we started,
Right.
so she'll start off.
Okay, good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss some of the work that we've been engaged in with our SCP over the last 3 years. Board members, you have been intimately involved with this, whether it be on the original steering committee or as members of the numerous groups, task forces, committees that we have to move these ideas forward. And the fact that we're here talking about it tonight, given all the resources and the hours of time that you have put into this, just shows an ongoing commitment to putting student learning at the forefront, so thank you for that. And I also would like to thank Dr. Banlow. Even though she officially started on August 1st, even before that, you've asked really deep and thoughtful questions about the SCP, which shows to me that you value the work that has been going on. But almost parallel to that, you have asked a lot of questions about the context in which this is all developed. And I think that both of those are really integral to figuring out a path forward. So that's just one of the many reasons that so many of us are excited to begin this next chapter with you at the helm. So thank you, Dr. Bosch. So what we hope to talk about in the next 15 minutes or so is the genesis of the strategic coherence plan, the evolution of it over time, what it looks like from a curriculum instruction and assessment perspective, and how that work is ongoing into the coming school year. And then we have some ideas about some proposed next steps for the SCP. Okay, so pre-SCP, it actually existed. There was life before our strategic coherence plan. And I don't need to tell you this, you live in this community, you have kids that go here. This is a really good place to be, right? Like, we should feel really good about the experiences that our students have here. So this wasn't about a deficit model, but instead of helping us really evolve with the changing times and help propel our students into the 21st century. So, Brewster is a very strong community with proud traditions and values, right? So I think back to even when I started as a high school social studies teacher here, what are some of those shared values that we have? We knew that we weren't all about test scores, right? A student in front of us is much more than a score on an assessment or even a set of assessments. We could all agree to that. But then it was a matter of, okay, well, what is it that we value? And if we asked 10 people what it is that we stood for as a learning organization, we would have gotten different answers. So it was with that sort of background that we move into this next phase where we say, okay, we want something that we can articulate together and that we can craft together and articulate to move forward, something that we can point to and say, yep, this is what we want for all of our students, K-12, every single day as they move through their journey here. So the original SCP team, there were 19 members. 9 of those members are still with the district. 7 of the 19 are in their original positions. And you know what, that's okay, this is a good thing, because the SCP is supposed to capture a vision of a learning organization. It's larger than any single individual or set of individuals. So the fact that this has been sustained and is still thriving, given that over half of the people that were on the original planning team aren't there, is a really good thing. It means that it is who we are and it is what we value. This quote we took from one of the texts that we used when we were first sort of integrating the SCP, a book called Most Likely to Succeed. You may remember, if you were on the board at that time, you engaged in a book talk or two. But if you wouldn't mind taking a moment to just read the quote. So the idea with this is we selected this one because it really encapsulates the shifts that we're asking educators, students, parents to embrace as we push through the implementation of this SCP. The shift from teacher-centered classrooms to student-centered classrooms, and from passive learning to active learning. And so this is something that really, and I should also mention, we talked about content. I don't want you to think that what we're trying to say is content isn't important, but instead content is a vehicle to these higher order skills that we're asking for in our SCP. So with all of that together, what this really did for us, the Strategic Coherence Plan, is it anchored our values. This is not just a beach thing because it's August still. But it really anchored our values and said, we can point to it and said, yep, this is what we believe in, and we're not going to stray from this, and we're going to help use it as a filter to sort of run our decisions through. But it's also sort of a lighthouse, so a guide from afar, a place to aspire to, and for us to continue to move towards as we progress. So just quickly, this is not meant to be completely comprehensive because it's familiar to many, if not all of you. But in 15-16, we formed our team. We initially had 8 skills identified, and in March of 2016, the board adopted the plan. 16-17 was really about selling it. So it started with the why. We used the text Most Likely to Succeed to have these book talks. And we had over 50% of our educators that committed to 4 one-hour after-school sessions to really talk about why this shift was needed and how it fits into a system that we currently have, which we don't have control over all the time in terms of state mandates and what students need to do to be able to graduate and meet certain benchmarks. In 16-17, we expanded the SCP team, while at the same time refining the skills from 8 to 5. We developed our profile of a graduate, and then we moved into 17-18. So we took the 2 teams. We had the liaisons meeting, we had the SCP team, we merged them into one gigantic team that helped to work through this next set of what do these skills look like in action. So we took a learning walk. We were able to gather some examples of what these skills look like in action, K-12 across content areas. And then Ms. Christian De Jesus Hernandez, who, as you know, is the middle school assistant principal, led a group of K-12 teachers for a few days over the summer to develop the rubrics that we use for each of the skills, which was a Herculean task, which they did a fantastic job of. And that's what we have been using ever since. 18-19, just as the year that just ended, we made the SCP more visible. You can see the decals behind you, but we also have the roadmap for community members to go on and to see sort of the progression and the journey of what we're offering our students. Dr. Henning Piedmont for the administrative learning, for the administrative visit, which is it's the New York State language for administrative evaluations. What she did is every administrator had to choose 2 SCP skills and use the rubrics and conduct a learning walk with a group of teachers and filter them out as a way, again, to make this sort of learning visible. And then, of course, I'm biased, but this is where it gets really exciting because it transfers into curriculum. So we had in-depth studies like our K-12 science, our K-5 math, our K-12 digital learning competencies that were saying, okay, so again, this is our anchor, this is what we believe in. So based on what we have, where are the gaps? Is this what we're seeing every day in our science classrooms or in our K-5 math classrooms? We had a number of conversations about the need to align better K-12, which absolutely we need to do. And just last spring, our liaisons committed to a mapping process, which will be ongoing as well into this year. And then, selection of resources. These are just some examples, but these were most poignant in my mind. When it came time to collect or to make a decision about our K-5 math curricular resource, we had collected all this data, we had run pilots, we sat down and we said, okay, so which of these resources help students, which of these resources fosters our SCP skills better than the other or more readily than the other? And it helped us sort of crystallize that decision. And finally, professional learning. What we tried to do was to integrate a model called Inquiry Strands, which was really responsive to the adult learner. So the idea is the SCP is our overarching umbrella, right? And so what we did is we developed topics under that umbrella to help teachers study in depth over the course of a year. So it integrated some teacher choice into what they were going to be studying, all the while, moving forward the mission outlined in our SCP. I'm not going to go into too much depth with this, but please just know from this, the idea is that all of that really took root in those curricular areas are now becoming more and more embedded. This is a process where we're moving forward and really seeing this on a deeper level. So, and I should say, all this is also being done through committee work. This is not a top-down sort of thing. It's a really organic sort of process where we're saying, okay, what is the next step in this progression? So an example is in-depth studies. So I spoke a little bit about K-5 math and K-12 science. Well, now what we have developed is a comprehensive curriculum review cycle, which is not foreign to our friends in New Jersey, apparently, but an accomplishment for us.
New York.
New York. But this helps us look at curriculum in a way that's more systemic, and that teachers know that we're committed to this and that we're going to make sure that we study this in depth in a really concentrated way. Another great example is, I spoke about the administrative learning walks, but some teachers through committee work at the K-2 level have said, it would be really powerful if these were teacher-led learning walks. Great. That's an awesome professional learning experience for teachers to engage in, again, using the rubrics and talking about best practices. So again, this is ongoing work from a curriculum instruction and assessment perspective that has grown organically through the work of the SCP.
Dr. Gosh, can you go back to the slide?
Please.
I'd like to just make a few points. Dr. Gosh and I spent quite a bit of time articulating over the transition to becoming here. And I have to say, the district did an outstanding job with the SCP plan, coming up with the process, and we honor the past and everything that has gone into this plan. And we've been spending a little bit of time talking about where we need to go from here. And we really feel that we really need to start working and focusing on student outcomes. And that goes right into what Dr. Gosh has been sharing with you regarding the curriculum review cycle. They did a tremendous amount of work, and they did all the right things by looking at the curriculum review cycle, curriculum mapping, and being sure that they were able to, whatever the students are learning in the classroom, it clearly matches the curriculum in the district and throughout the state. So the review cycle is critical. It's usually a 5-year cycle, and it's the same thing here in New York and New Jersey. It's the same thing. And they can't review the curriculum, as you know, different topics every single year. So we do it in a cycle. So that's perfect. We're going to continue to do that. The teacher-led learning walks is an excellent thing for teachers. It shows the success of the administrative learning walks. So I thought it was fantastic. The K-12 alignment is critical as we move forward with the curriculum, with whether we're talking about state tests or benchmark assessments in the district. All of that is critical for students to make sure that all of our kids are successful throughout the district. And expanded selections we're going to be talking about, and additional opportunities for skills and action. So we had spoken, if you go to the next slide, we'll do that one together. Right. Is the other, so one of the areas that we really both, and the team kind of feel strongly about, is getting and forgive me if I say it the wrong way,
The steering committee for the
we talked about getting a steering committee together to start to take the SCP to the more student outcome level. So that was the first thing we feel very strongly about. This piece is something that the leadership team we really feel strongly about. I'm going to let Dr. Gosh talk about it first, and I want to say a few things.
Sure. So we've spoken about this as we were hiring the new administrators this cycle through. But of the 14 administrators that are not housed in this building, 11 of them have joined us within the last 3 years. Some of those are internal candidates, so they know, our culture, but there's still a learning curve that's attached to that. And of course, 6 of them, which you've been involved with the hiring, are brand new to their role this year. So we want to make sure that we do what we can to support them.
Right, we had spoken, and we have a great leadership team, and I'm really, first of all, I'm very, very excited to be working here. I'm very, very excited to be working with this team, because the leadership team's great, I got out to see the teachers, but one of the things we really feel that we want to focus on also is building leadership capacity and supporting that, and bringing the team together, and helping us all move together. Not only K-12 articulation for our kids with the curriculum, but K-12 vertical articulation across the entire district. So we're starting that at our administrative retreat this week, a little bit with some leadership building activities. But this is one of the things that we really wanted just to share with you that we feel is very, very important as we move forward, especially some of our new folks and some of our other folks that have been here that would love to come together.
Yes, thank you. And some of what we also have spoken extensively about is expanding that out to new educators. So I meet monthly with new educators, but I feel like I can do a better job when I meet with them to make the time more meaningful. We want to make sure we keep those sort of touch points so that they feel like this is an accessible place, like they can reach out for assistance and have questions answered, but we want to really make sure that we create a more comprehensive process in order to support them.
And this goes back to what we talked about on the process outcomes. Were fantastic. The district did a great job with creating the SCP process. Everything went beautifully. So now we feel that we really have to, with the steering committee, dig in a little bit deeper on the learning outcomes for kids. What is happening in the classrooms? How can we know that there's great things happening in the classroom, but how can we support that work and continue to move the district forward? So that's what we're hoping.
So an example of what this might look like, a process outcome, for example, and when we say that, we mean a process from, an outcome from the process of the SEP, like laying that really important foundation, which we know needed to happen, but then this next step. So a process outcome, for example, could be the rubrics. The rubrics are great, they needed to happen, now what, right? So now what is the student learning outcome? So maybe it's K-12 educators sitting together looking at student work with the critical thinking rubric saying, okay, what are you seeing here? What are some patterns you're seeing K2, 3, 5, 6, 8, 9, 12, K-12, and using that to inform our next steps.
And our hope is to create, working with the steering committee, because we know there's already great things going on in the classrooms. We are aware of that, and Michelle has shared that with me, and I've sat at many meetings already. But we want to really, really create a plan moving forward. And it's not going to happen in 1 year, it's not going to happen in 2 years. To make real change in education, it takes about 3 to 5 years to start to see some really deep entrenched improvements academically. The district is fantastic academically, but we want to just continue to move things forward for all of us.
So then to hash that out, what that would look like in year 4 and year 5 would be reinstating this steering committee, as Dr. Balno mentioned. If you notice in the group that we had initially, which was in one of the first few slides, we had parents, we had administrators, we had teachers, we had a community member. We didn't have any students. So we had talked about making sure that we include students in this next sort of iteration of the plan. And using that steering committee, part of the strength of the SCP when it was initially created was that it was a group of people in a room talking about what it was that we valued, right? So we want to make sure that we get back to that, get back to the strength of this plan, which was the shared vision that we created. So we can recalibrate, sort of say, where are we? There's some goals outlined in the SCP, but we also have some ideas about what some other essential questions are that we could really tackle and use that in order to set our focus.
So, and then the one last piece that we also spoke about is making sure that we make that connection between the district and the community. And we came up with a few ideas that we'll share tonight as we talk, to make that connection, because we're doing all this great work and not everybody can come to these committee meetings. How do we make sure what's going on here is articulated to the community? And we're creating that awareness and bringing everybody together. So we'll talk a little bit more about it. That was one of the other things we want to really focus on. So thank you, Dr. Bosch. I really appreciate you coming to share your expertise. And see if you have any questions or anything before we wrap up this piece.
Yes.
Okay.
Still reading. Okay, so I think that kind of might be answering. So first, the steering committee, so we had the SCP, I don't know what it was called the last 3 years, a task force, or was that the steering committee? Or was
No, so the steering committee is a smaller group. So this, what I consider a steering committee would be the original, similar to the original group that we had together, where we had parents, teachers, administrators, adding students to a community member. At some points when we had the larger group together, it was about 40 or 45 people in the room, and it was great in order to build capacity, but that's not where we are right, in my opinion, where we are right now. Like, we need to get back to that core representative group to have really meaningful conversations about what now, we have these process outcomes with the SCP, great. Now, how does that translate to a typical student, typical classroom on an average day, right? So we identify those student learning outcomes, and then we collect data on those outcomes, right, into year 4.
Right, that's a really good question, Sonia, is, you know, the steering committee is exactly what Dr. Gosh is explaining, but they steer the direction. But then they come together and they report out to the board, they report out to other stakeholders, and constantly are giving updates on where are we heading. And they're also listening to some of, you know, to the board, to the community. So the steering committee really starts to dig in and they steer the ship. And you have enough representation on that committee from every single one of our stakeholders. That's very, very important to make sure that everybody has a say at the table, and that the steering committee is going in the direction that the entire group feels is reflective of the work that you've done in the past.
So that sounds good and effective, which therefore that SCP group that was meeting regularly last year and years before doesn't need to meet anymore?
It gets scaled down.
So that group just gets scaled down to now the steering committee? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Essentially.
And through other ongoing work that we have with the curriculum review cycle, with the alignment work that's taking place K-12 for everybody next year, there's going to be enough of the work that's continuing forward and enough of input from different, I don't want to say constituents, but from teachers to make sure that they're making it operationalized within their own content area.
And once the 5-year cycle is up, as you had planned in your original plan, once 2021 hits, it's coming sooner, then that whole group, correct me if I'm wrong because I was not here, would come back together again and revisit the 5-year plan and say, what have we accomplished? Where do we need to take it from here? And come up with another 5-year plan. And hopefully it's going to be taking us to an even higher level. So that's correct.
Okay, so then how, with the steering committee, with the people that you anticipate, I'm sure you've outlined who you think the stakeholders would be on it. What's the plan for that in terms of getting it out and when starting and or is that kind of next steps?
I think once we get hopefully as we, I know it needs to be done in a public session, once we get any district goals, some validation and direction from the board and permission from the board, then I think we want to roll it out right away.
Okay.
If the board's on board with that.
Sorry, second question. So the last.
That's only one?
That was
Four or five.
Subsection, whatever. So findings inform the next 5 years. So you had talked about the real academic change can take 3-5 years. So when we started this 3 years ago, and we may have been, I don't know what the word would be, big expectations, right? But then once you get in it, you have to get there, and sometimes it just may take longer. So my question is, the thought was we're going to finish out 5 years and, like you said, come up with another plan. But in talking about like this year, looking at this K-12 student outcomes, all that stuff, it almost seems like, I'm not sure if we're almost creating a new kind of 5-year plan already, or are we looking to have some student outcomes already achieved like this year and next year, finishing up the 5? Because it seems to me like there might be like another rollout happening at the same time. So I'm not sure if I'm quite understanding. It's not me, right? I'm a little lost on that. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Only because I'm still on the learning curve.
No, that's great.
I want to honor what the work's that's
So-
been done.
The way that this has worked is when we were sort of kicking this work off, we spoke to a number of other districts, North Salem right next door being one. And so the core mission didn't change, right? They still had the same skills that they focused on, but because of where they were as a district and how they had progressed, their goals would change. So to see it as a real cyclical process with not really an endpoint, but a point where we're continually improving and continually assessing where we are and then setting new goals to achieve that, is more of how I know we have sort of approached it in the past. Like it wouldn't be, okay, 5 years, check that off, we're done. But instead, okay, where are we now? Continually taking stock of where we are and where we want to be, and then figuring out different ways to meet those goals. Does that make sense?
It does, because I'm kind of wondering if, so we have the current SCP which has this end date of 2021, but I kind of wonder if, I guess you can do it 2 different ways. You can just look at where we are now and build on that and get there, or perhaps even now, because I'd hate to like wait till 2 more years from now and then figure out, okay, let's have another goal for 5 years later, so now we're 10 years out from reaching a goal that maybe if we start now, we know it's going to take 3 years or so. So they are kind of overlapping.
Yes, and
So
that's what we
it-
have, and that's what we
making
have to do.
sense? Yeah.
That's what we have to do. And that's what the
Okay.
steering committee would come up with, was the student outcomes, student goals.
Okay.
And something that, no pun intended, but there is a lot of adaptability built into the plan.
Right.
And I've just seen that just over the last few years and how it sort of has evolved and how people have taken ownership of it in ways that I would never think that it would come to fruition. So by sort of, again, recalibrating, getting this core group together and saying, okay, 3 years later, we're here, what is it that we want to achieve? And we have, we've talked about tiered goals, right?
Right.
To take a similar process in that way.
One of the things I shared with Dr. Gosh is, in my previous experience, many of my administrators, we did tiered goals. So if you want to make some really significant changes academically and you're creating SMART goals based upon a math goal that you have, it's got to be tiered. It will not happen, that depending upon what the goal is, it might not happen that first year. So what's going to happen that first year? Then I want to know what's going to happen the second year. What's going to happen the third? So the goals will build upon each other. So that's the approach we want to take with the steering committee with their input. But you've got to have your first goal, then you build on the second, then the third, depending upon what our needs are. So I really have to dig down deep into, we have to look at the data. That was one of the things that we mentioned strongly when we met, was really digging into the data and looking at it. Student data.
I have a question on that. Like, so what is because you mentioned the student data. You mentioned teachers sitting down maybe in the 6th grade and saying, let's look at their work. And so you're sampling, you couldn't possibly look at every single 6th grader's,
Right.
ELA work and decide, are we seeing the SCP values and, are we seeing in their work that they're understanding and performing in that way? So what is the data that you're going to?
Can I give an
pull
overall?
together?
Yeah, please.
So the biggest thing in a district, in our district or any district, is we have to really look at what are the major academic needs district-wide, K-12. So let's say we look at K-12 and find out that, there's 3 major academic areas that we have to work on. And those are the 3 areas that could become part of a district goal or superintendent goal moving forward. And there could also be specific goals, academic goals, for the high school, for the middle school, for the elementary school. So we all have to be working together. And the K-12 articulation is not just for the students, it's for us as leaders and administrators. So when we start to dig in and we start to see what are the district needs, K-12, what are their specific high school needs, middle school needs, then those goals, whatever the district decides, and whatever the board decides for the superintendent's goals, should then be shared with the building principals and the vice principals. And then it should be, the teachers will have their goals, but it should be across the district, so that we are all working in unison. So that's kind of what we're trying to get to here. I guess hopefully it's the bigger picture of everything. And so this week. In fact, when we have our administrative retreat, we're going to be talking to the administrators about it, that once the district and the board decides on the goals that they want for the district and the superintendent, we will be sharing those with our principals, with our leaders. And then they will be meeting with their teachers and talking about goals. And that is the only way we make really true change, is through everybody working together, creating goals, putting things in our annual review, but also, professional development plans, so that everybody's moving together in the same direction. And we are building the capacity and the leadership and the academic program in the district. So I think that was what we had talked. And I hope I said that okay.
Yeah.
From your perspective too. I respect you.
So, so all of this is internal goals, setting internal rubrics and outcomes. Not to make this political at all, but can you talk a little bit about sort of how this fits in the framework? Because we also have to answer to the state and the federal government and things like that. Can you just kind of give us an idea of sort of, and those things change and they can come at uncertain times, so how does that sort of all dovetail together?
So are you talking the framework of the
Just, I mean, just, yeah, I mean, obviously with this plan would be good, but, as far as, whatever you're most comfortable talking about, either in a general sense or in a specific sense, sort of how we kind of line up the requirements that we have to meet from state and federal, along with what we can do and what we have jurisdiction over internally.
So Dr. Melcham, I'm happy to talk about the SEP and also from the instructional standpoint from what you've experienced here so far.
So something, I don't know if this directly answers your question, so if it doesn't, please tell me. But something that's on our mind is high school graduation rate, right? We know that there are certain factors that go into that are a little bit out of our control, right? And we've already taken some steps this summer to try to head that off. But that to me is something where we look at, okay, the long-term goal. So the SCP is overarching. This is what we want students to experience on a daily basis through our curriculum instruction assessment, right, and learning environment. So a subsection of that might be improving the graduation rate, and to really boiling down as to what can we control and what we can't. So we know that students have to pass those 5 Regents exams in order to get their high school diploma. So there's that we deal with, but then what are the other pieces? Something that is, again, sort of out there is how do we improve the climate? Something more difficult to measure, but still something that we have heard is something that we should be focusing on.
Like more qualitative.
Yes,
And the other one was
yes.
quantitative.
Yes. So maybe we look at things like participation in clubs and activities, or student perception surveys, or staff perception surveys. So, but to be able to get people in a room to talk about that, and have that steering committee say this is a goal or a direction we want to move in, and then having Nikki and her team go back and say this is how we think we can maybe take steps towards that. Might be an example of how overarching, this is what we want, and this is the sort of curricular program that we have, and these are some pedagogical practices that we're putting into place. But we are operating within the structures of we need kids to pass these 5 Regents exams, and is that really what is holding students back from graduating, or is it these other factors? And to be able to put action steps into place in a tiered way in order to address that. That makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Just real quick, I like the idea that you want to include kids. What's the number of kids that you're looking to put on that committee?
We didn't really talk about that yet, but I'm thinking, I don't know, I think maybe one representative from each school, high school, middle school, yeah. I think from each school would be good. Maybe not.
Yeah, no, we had the TriState visit come in about the SCP. The younger kids blew the adults away.
Yeah. So
My brother really needs to work on his perseverance because tries to learn in his homework.
If I can just comment, like, one of the things I think we've always said is, wouldn't it be great to get to a place where we're just ahead of whatever the state, or whatever anyone comes down, doesn't matter, because
Right.
we're already there, but like, right, so we're just trending ahead of it, so that they don't affect, I think, our system. It's just more like, okay, we'll appease the state with this
Check
mandate
that
this
box.
way, because, but we're already ahead of it. And so my hope, like, I think we're still on track with IB. Is that still something there?
I'm glad you brought that up,
Because-
because we were talking about that today.
I mean, that's something that
Yes.
should really, one day, I mean, still more down the future, but if it can even go to lower rates, that would be something that just, as a standard, that would be above everything else, and we can live in that world, great. Yeah.
So we're still an IB candidate school, and there's a multi-year process for that. And we went through the feasibility study and wrote a report, an application, and we're accepted to be a candidate school. So we met again as a steering committee, and we talked about, another steering committee, but this one an IB one. And we talked about how we can sort of take what we learned and spread it out to the rest of the high school staff. And we have that 2023 group that meets, that we talked about our next steps as an IB steering committee being to address the 2023 and sort of talk about some of the misconceptions that come with IB. And again, just going through the process is a wonderful thing, but that is a,
And I told
Like that
Dr.
forward.
Grosh I joined her in those conversations, so we know that those are conversations that we need to have with the professionals in the district, and something
Are
we
we-
didn't talk about today.
Originally, it was this, that if it went according, like smoothly, that next year could be a first year to implement some stuff.
it would be with the incoming freshman class, it would be the first group, but the courses don't start until 11th grade.
Oh, okay.
That's an IB rule that you have to be 15 or 16 in order to even take the courses.
But this
Two-
incoming class would be the first
First
one.
to be able to
We'll
benefit.
be able to do
if-
that.
if we
Potentially, that would be
get
the
there.
earliest.
Okay, got it.
Earliest.
So 2 years. Okay.
Any other questions from the board for us, on this piece?
I really like the students are going to be included in it and will have a say, and I think that matters so much.
Okay, thank you.
No.
Dr. Grosh, I just want to tell you how wonderful it is working with her, and I want to thank her for taking the
Still
time
early.
to join us this evening. So I know you need to head on to something else, so thank you for joining us.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle.
So now to B. Okay, thank you, Michelle. So be setting district goals for 2019, 2020. So now have, based on, I guess, the presentation pulling from that, because I know you did outline a couple things from year 4, which is still up there. So building off of that, you have ideas on.
So I did talk to several people in the district and our leadership team, and very similar to what I mentioned already, was the first thing is that we'd love, and I'd have to flesh out the goal more for you, and of course it needs to be done in public, but I put together a SMART goal based upon getting the, taking the SCP to moving towards more student outcomes, and getting that steering committee going, starting to create some multi-tier goals, making sure that we have some benchmarks for each year. So that would be the first thing that I'd like you to think about and consider, is taking the SCP, knowing that there's been a lot of great work done on it already, that the process is in place, that it's been very successful, it's happening in a lot of classrooms, but we want to dig deeper into it and start to look at more at student outcomes. And it would be much more detailed than that, but that would be something that I'd really like to focus on with the staff. And if you have any questions, just stop me at any time as I roll through.
But then when we're talking about student outcomes, it's more of the data-driven piece, or just offering more things to the students?
The data-driven, the academic piece. Because I think everyone around this table, from what I'm listening, I'm learning about the district, but I think we want to move the district forward. We want to see more academic achievement, and there's a lot of great things happening here already, but we have to drill into the data, and we have to look, as I said, district-wide, school-wide, in the classrooms. How can we continue to make progress and get to where, where we all want to, there's always another level we want to get to.
And that's tied to the, I don't know, is it Alpine or whatever that the system we have, which we track all our data with, or is this will be something new that will be developed
Scott,
for what we're talking about?
I have to check, because just coming in, I think it's tied to Alpine, but it's something that I still need to learn, just coming
Okay.
on board, but I can find it. So that would be the first thing that we'd like to consider, that I'd like to consider. The second would be building new leadership capacity with our new administrators. We have a lot of new administrators. We have several administrators that have only been here for a few years. I'm hearing that we need to come together more as a team. We need to build our capacity as leaders and make sure that we're steering the ship together in unison. So what that would look like, I would lay that out clearly in a goal for you to review prior to a board meeting in public, but that would be something that I'd like to also to move forward. Any questions on that, just let me know. And then I think one of the other things that I've been hearing in the district, and honoring the past, but really working on creating more communication with the community. And I've got several ideas for that. One of the things that I would love to throw out there is a key communicator committee. And what is that? A key communicator is where I would meet with a group of key leaders in the outside community that you would let me know who you think would be good. For example, in my past experiences, we had the president of the Chamber of Commerce. We had some very high political folks within the community. We had some CEOs from businesses, and we had people from all different walks of life that were on the key communicator committee. And I met with them 3 to 4 times a year and gave them updates on all the great things that are happening in the district. But we also did items around the table where they would ask questions and give me input. So that would be one way that would be one thing I'd put into that goal of closing the gap between home and school and creating more of a unison communication with the district and the community. Other things with public relations, I know we have we work with BOCES, we have someone come in to do public relations. We also have the district website and learning. We have Donna Alvin that does a great job. So I think the theme of telling great stories, of what are the great things that are happening throughout the district, and making sure we're getting those out there so people hear. So really working on the PR part of it too, that's something that I could focus on. One of the other things, I've been meeting with key stakeholders and getting some really, really great ideas on some restructuring of some meetings in the district that I'll talk to you more about when I put the goal together. But making sure that there's communication. I'll give an example. One of the things that we're looking at, and I'm just waiting to get I've gotten some pretty good AOKs, but I just want to make sure everybody's good with it, is creating a faculty advisory council where you have, this would just be more strictly academic, and I would continue, of course, to meet with some of the other union leaders throughout the district, because that's important that I meet with them every month. But the faculty advisory council is when you have your central office administrators, you have your leaders of your teacher association, you have your building representatives from your teachers association, you have your leaders of your administrative council, and you have some of their leaders, and we all come to the table and we talk. And we talk about, these are the things that we have a very clear agenda that's put together, but how do we work together to make things even better? How do we move everything forward in unison? And you're making sure that you're communicating. So that would be bridging the gap, not only, I guess it's really more not even just outside community, it's inside community. So that would be the other thing I'd love to focus on and put that together for you. I think 3 goals would be ambitious for me, if that's all right with the board. I'm used to working with 3 goals, and those are the 3 things I'd love for you to consider. Any questions at all at this point?
Any of these committees or councils, are there any public meeting law requirements?
Not for this,
Okay.
not for the internal. I'd have to check. It's a good question, Scott.
Not
Not for the key communicator?
Yeah, no, so, not for internal ones, if they're board-created task forces or committees, then those need to be open to the public and that kind of thing. But
Right.
it'd be like, teachers meeting,
Right.
curriculum map, that
It's part
kind
of
of
school.
stuff, right. The one I would need to find out about would be like the key communicator committee one, where
Yes.
you have, that I'm not sure, because that's
Yeah.
new.
Yes, you'd have to find out.
I would have to just check, I mean, great idea, I think, but just in terms of, what does, because it's an internal, it'd be your, I guess, committee, but because it involves community members,
Right,
there might be
right.
some piece to that, so which would be fine,
Mhm.
it would just be noticed, and perhaps there could be a core group that people can still come and at least observe, like even, audit people, we have our committee, but people can come and want to just talk if they want or whatever. So that would be one I'd have to check into, or we have to check into. And then kind of a question or thought. So some of these things you've already done and I know have had success with. But interestingly enough, like I think some of us had ideas of having gone through, well, that didn't work, or just for Brewster.
Yes.
And there have been other ideas thrown out there, and I don't know if would you be open to just hearing some,
Absolutely,
seeing
yes,
what.
yes.
I mean, just for example, like I don't even know when. I think it came up maybe during the discussions around budget and trying to. We took the budget 101s, which were these informative meetings, to actually having more interactive meetings in the community and stuff like that. So it'd be good to continue with those. But people don't come. They don't. I don't know. So one of the things we were thinking, we talked about like some sort of newsletter. We'd like, yes, everyone's very electronic these days and they're on social media all night. But there's still a huge portion of the community here that they look at what comes in the mail. So I know there's a cost to it. I mean, that would be something we'd all have to consider. But if we did the newsletter we sent out this year, the budget newsletter that had extra pages, it wasn't just numbers, I actually really appreciated it. I don't know if you got to see it.
Victor did show it to me.
Yeah,
yes.
I mean, we had, it wasn't just here's the budget, here are the numbers, what do you think? They really they put a great presentation together for people to have at home, and talked about the successes of the students and where some of our kids have gone off to, what their accomplishments have been, like what we do and what it does and how it gives back to the community. So the investment isn't just money going into the schools, it actually comes back. And I thought it did a great job, and so I was kind of thinking and I know it came up somewhere, I just don't remember where, that if we could maybe have two. So it's not just the one they get at budget time, which has to go out by law, we have to send that out, and it goes to every, registered mailbox in the town. Maybe 6 months prior, there could be something, which would be, I guess, I don't know, whatever, the beginning of the school year or something. But just something that could also be informative at another time of the year. Could be a way to reach a good portion of the residents that just, they don't have technology, they're older and are still our voters and live on fixed incomes, and it would be good to keep in touch with them as well. I don't know, so it's just a thought that we had brought up somewhere, I know.
So one of the things I just want to say to the board, because I gave you the 3 big goals that I thought, and those would be goals that I put into my evaluation that you would look at. But that doesn't mean that those are the only goals. So something like that, absolutely. There's going to be many things that I want to hear from you. That's why I want to hear what is it that you really need, and what do we need to work on
Like
together.
how these can break down.
Absolutely.
So I think that, I mean, we've got student focus, we have, kind of employee district specific focus, and then we have community focus, and I think those are the 3 areas of our community district that we should focus on, and they're specific for the year. I'm okay with these particular ones in some way.
Okay.
And if I may, and please stop me if I'm going too far. We've provided a couple of different instruments that could measure the superintendent's evaluation. One is from the New York State School Board Association. The other one is from the New York State School Superintendents Association. And I've used a model that's very, very similar to the New York State School Board Association superintendent evaluation. So I'm leaning toward that. I'd love for you to take a look at it, and you will decide, we'll decide together which instrument to use. But the beauty of this is that throughout the year, I need to be providing artifacts and documentation of what am I doing to meet these goals. So it's not just a snapshot in time, it's a full color video of what your superintendent is doing. And it's important, I think, also to come back to you in mid-year, not evaluate it, but for me to report to you mid-year, or I can do it more if you want, so how are you doing, Dr. Vanlo, with these goals? And we need you to come out and report. So that would be something I would love for you to consider, and then by a certain timeline, Sonia has the timeline in her head.
September 10th.
September 10th, my goals need to be solidified, done. As soon as we're done here, I'll work on them and get them to you for you to review. But then by the end of the year, you know, I need to make sure I have all that information within the system for you. So I've had some training. Thank you very much for helping me set up with that. And I know that it's actually pretty user friendly when you get on the computer and you finally get into it as far as getting in and actually evaluating. So I just wanted to put that out there. If that would be something that the board would consider, is using the New York State School Board Association tool if possible.
Yes, no, thank you for bringing that up and how the goals tie into your evaluation as a reflection of the district and what, you know, you're put to task to by us. So what we can do is actually, we do have our retreat following. We can get a little more specific and kind of personal with how that would look for you
Okay.
in that portion.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, great. So then when you get, like you said, you break it down
I'll
more,
put
we
the
can
goals together.
figure out what, which business meeting will present to the community, the very specific outline of what the
Okay.
goals look like.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
So, thank you for that. We will now move on to our board goals for the 2019-20 school year. And so I brought with me the board survey that we put out some months ago. And we recapped it briefly at a board meeting also, maybe what, 2 months ago now,
Yeah.
a couple months ago. And so I brought it back together because it was interesting to go through. There were a lot of perspectives. People, you know, one of the things that stood out for me was some of the things that people brought up were kind of outdated. You know, they were bringing up issues from 2 or 3 years ago. And so it seemed like once something angered someone or frustrated someone or an experience happened, that they lived in that. So that to me, even though that wasn't specifically stated that way, for me that was telling, because I thought, well, we failed somewhere in things that happen and updating people. So I think, you know, working on the communication and connecting with the community is really important. And one of the things was that the board doesn't communicate enough also. That was kind of a recurring theme. And, you know, so for us to figure out, because so much comes from the superintendent, all this information comes out of the district, but there's still some expectation from the community to have communication directly from the board. And we need to discuss what would that look like. For me, that would be, you know, kind of one of the overarching, there are more specific things that I'll recap for us, because I was kind of thinking that we really should show the community, and that could be a communication we send out in a letter, you know, after reviewing, working in a public meeting, a work session. We went through, and here are the top 3 to 5 things that were the recurring theme that came up.
I can't remember if it was a specific comment from someone who responded to the survey or if it's something that we discussed when we discussed the survey, but putting out some sort of, I mean, I think it could be in the backpack or however, like either a summary of sort of the most important things that were done at the last 5 meetings, depending on how often we're gonna put this out. And it's harder to say going forward, but we typically have some idea as to, you know, because some things are mandated. These are the bigger issues that will be addressed coming forward, so you can give people a heads up of the highlights.
That's exactly the
And,
word I was thinking.
or a summary of things we've done that are, you know, people
Yeah.
care about. And looking ahead, these are the things that are coming up. So it may give people,
So we could have,
Like a monthly report.
yeah, like a report,
Yeah.
basically a
Booster board
report of
event
the board.
highlights and.
You know, maybe some.
summary and highlights, we could call
Yeah,
that, it's fine.
something.
Are you suggesting like monthly or?
Quarterly?
I would think monthly is maybe too frequent, because we do go through periods
Yeah,
where
there's not.
there's not that many highlights, you know? But maybe quarterly or, you know.
I think quarterly is fair. And then through just all our social media outlets and your backpack stuff like that, just the way
Yeah.
we send out our
I mean, do a
orders.
backpack, put it on the districts.
Our site, and we can have our
Districts.
quarterly updates on our new site.
Yeah.
You're still gonna wanna hit the people that don't do social media like you spoke about.
But I wonder
You're still
if
gonna
we
have to
could
mail
get,
out.
So if
You can't
we,
just leave them out.
no, right, so if we, the thing though is it just would get costly to send that out, but if we did a newsletter, right, that's got the district piece,
Page.
the board page, I mean, you know, whatever it is, the student page, so the update would be kind of
All together? On what?
in one newsletter, but let's just, like, the board can have its,
Homepage
Section.
preparation.
right, that we can then put, that half year.
You're saying on paper,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, so that could be, let's say, twice a year, because, you know, we get comments on both sides of the fence, that people want that paper, and paper costs money. We're gonna get that criticism, but unfortunately, we are missing a piece of the public that needs that paper still. I mean, one day, eventually, we will, you know, generationally, we will be all technology-based, but we're not
I
quite
wonder
there
if,
yet.
the local, you know, the free newspapers, because I actually think a lot of people pick them up. I wonder if they would print, you know, if our highlights and summary could be turned into an article that would be submitted, and maybe they would be willing to print it in those as well. I mean, they
Yeah.
print stuff about the districts all the time.
I think we could absolutely do that.
Doesn't have to be a giant page, full page, but I'm sure they're looking for
They need
information
Maybe
to
content.
include, yeah, for content.
Quarterly, perhaps, right? Because I still think that not every household's gonna go get that paper. So I think maybe that quarterly piece, we can look into seeing if that.
So it would be the same thing that we're doing quarterly on, you know, Facebook, the website, e-backpack, and if we
maybe
can
the
get
newspaper.
maybe these newspapers to buy in to do it there. Because you are, I do think, I mean, I pick it up and I'm obviously, you know, internet savvy, but I think a lot of people do pick them up. And probably a lot of those people are some of the groups that we're not reaching otherwise.
Yeah, and then the key component areas that maybe people want to call back is
Yeah,
grocery stores.
that's where you find it.
Laundromats, places where, you know, different types of the population would circulate who pick up something and see it. And you can always have on the site, if you're interested in receiving an update from us, you know, sign on to our page and give us, so you can hit people electronically if they request it,
Yeah, we
besides
have that.
the other
Yeah.
stuff, but, I mean, it's gonna be a cost, but if we could make it as part of a newspaper, there's a cost to it also, from a component piece. We're not printing anything.
It is, my
We're
only,
getting
and
information out.
I think it's a great idea and I'd like to do that. I still think though, we would need to include a board update of some kind in a twice-a-year mailing, you know, the one that's got the budget information, because that paper is picked up by everybody, not everyone who lives in Brewster necessarily, or every people on the other side of town, whatever they might, I don't know, maybe if someone's growing all their own food in their backyard, never go to the grocery store, I have no idea, but like, so I think getting something to everyone's mailbox.
Print it twice a year, as long as we control, you know, the biggest thing I always hear is this, you know, the high glossy colorful
glossy
stuff.
paper.
Yeah.
People freak out. It's very expensive and it probably is more difficult to produce. Is there a way to produce something at a lower cost, simpler production, and of course we still get it out? I mean, I'd rather go to the side where we got too much information out, too many people, than here, well, this whole section of our population didn't get the information.
And I'd rather get 2 mailings out than 1 on glossy paper.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, our school newspaper is on, it's not glossy, but it's on color paper. It looks fine. You don't, you know, you're not keeping this for posterity. You need it for a week so you can read it, you know,
Right.
so maybe that's where it could work out in terms of cost.
Or maybe tie it to work sessions. You know, if a work session works down the road, you pick 1 or 2 big topics that are hot in the community at this time and say, I hate to say, you know, we're volunteering for more time in this, but on this day, we're coming in half an hour early to discuss this topic. If there's anybody of any interest, and, you know, that way we can get more things out there, and you specify it. And I think in a work session, there's more conversation than in a regular business meeting. So there's more time for interaction, obviously it wouldn't be getting the answers, but it's more of finding out what's going on. Then we could respond to it in a regular business meeting.
Yes, I agree. So that could be like a number two. So one, I put down as a goal, summary and highlights communications, right? So for us to, for more communication to come out from the board specifically. I mean, and it's interesting because everything that the district communicates, we've had our hands on. You know, we've had the discussions, we've had the board meetings about it. But it just looks like we're silent on it.
Right,
because
it's not
Right.
coming
from
from
us,
us.
right? So, you know, we can just, even if we're recapping the work that's been done, that we had our hands. So that would be one. Two, which did come up, Scott, in the survey as well, was what you just started to bring up, which is getting out, being more visible. And we talked about it at a board meeting a couple times probably. I reached out to other districts to see, you know, what do they do? And it's all kinds of stuff. Some have, they have all kinds of names for it, coffee chat stuff, or they have a name of a restaurant or coffee shop or something in town and they named it after that, and that's where they sit. Once a month, I think they were doing, then they had Saturday stuff where they would just be in the district somewhere. There's all kinds of things we can do, and we just, you know, could do something like that, or even if it's before, you know, often before board meetings, we have executive stuff we go over. But we could figure that out, but what are we willing to commit to? Because it would require us to, and they do, in other districts that do this, they do. They rotate through board members. So for example, if we did a Saturday morning, I don't know, you know, 10 a.m. or 10 to 11, that 1 hour, every Saturday, no matter what, you know, someone's sitting at Bob's Diner, let's just say, I don't know, you know, somewhere, we pick in the community that's kind of central, or perhaps we rotate, I'm not sure. But, and then we're just there. And, you know, there has to be very strict guidelines about it, because we can't make any decisions, we can't disclose information, but we can be there to listen.
More of getting the pulse. of what's
Correct,
going
we
on.
can listen.
I'll take this back and we'll discuss
Yeah,
it.
you know, and if there is information that we can share, of course we would, like, you know, whatever's happening, or this is where you can come, or how you can handle things. So districts that have struggled with what we're struggling with, that's how they've solved that problem, and it has worked. And there's lulls, sometimes like no one comes, so they just like, I just bring work and sit there and catch up on other stuff. But, so yeah, that would be a commitment that we have to agree to and figure out where and how we would do that, and putting ourselves physically out in the community. And I mean, it could be that, like, so for example, we enter into budget season and we get out into the community, we can be present also, you know, with, like, I know Victor would go out and, I'm guessing now, you know.
Of course.
We could also be there so that we can help, and that could maybe replace that week's
Right.
coffee shop chat or whatever.
Which is like this, like Brewster has their fall festival coming up in, I think, I want to say it's the first Sunday or second Sunday of September. Obviously, that's too short notice, but something like that, it's already a community event. You get a table, if you're not doing anything, you're doing your homework, you're reading a book. But, you know, there's there and accessibility, you know, because like a lot of the big, like I said, the fall festival that's coming up, a lot of the community groups are there.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
The Chamber of Commerce, my church has a booth there. Everybody's there, and there's an entertainment, there's activities. So it's not even like you're just a tiny piece of it. And also, you're out there, you're being seen, and you're seeing the community, so you sort of know more what's going on.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
So what does everyone else think about putting ourselves physically out into the community and being there?
I mean, I like, I mean, you want to hear what the community, what their concerns are, whether it's good or bad. So I just think it's all about the sacrifice. If we're willing to, as a team, sacrifice a Saturday, an hour, why not?
And it won't always be a Saturday, I mean, we should do it on a, Tuesday, not
Well, we could
Tuesday,
do-
but Thursday night sometime, or
I think we should have set, like, the
So it
first,
varies.
you know, so perhaps maybe every month of 4 weeks, let's say it's, we can just do 4, so if there's a 5th, it just falls off. But let's just say the first week of the month, the first Saturday of the month, we're here. The second week, we could
And
create
every
something
week
like
may
that.
be too much, I mean, maybe it's twice a month and not every week.
Start with one and see if it works. Okay,
Well, I
you're
think
cutting
it's
share.
gonna take time, like everything else, for people
Right.
to get what we're doing,
Right.
that we're there, like,
You
it,
don't wanna do it every week.
I think
Yeah,
every
probably
week is too much.
Okay.
Come on,
Twice a
Dave, you can
month
be there every
probably-
week.
Twice a month
Just
probably
add
be
them.
better.
So twice a month?
Yeah, I think once, every week is too much, I think.
Once a
Well, there's
week is
7 of
fine.
us, twice, and there's 12 months, so
Probably
it's
even double up.
24. That's not much, really.
Well, twice is much, once.
Okay, so twice a month. So, but we're okay with this, this could be a goal, we can hash out the how and all that, yeah?
That's fine.
You were gonna say something.
He wants to do.
He volunteers
He wants
for
to
the
do the
first
first
9
one.
months.
signed up already.
And every
I want my
Yeah,
own
we
public
send-
access TV show.
I'm sorry, you gotta go to
Can't do
Silver.
that Thursday night football.
Call it Eats with Eric.
That's
You pick the restaurant. Since you're going all over, we'll pick up his bit.
It's nice.
I'm gonna-
Can't spend more than $6.
Okay, let me just look through, there's, again, I have pages and pages of a lot of good stuff that came, but to kind of summarize,
Can I add one thing?
yeah.
Because I think, I don't know, you touched on it or it came up, but I think not only communication with the community, but I think we maybe should consider also making sure that we have a greater presence in the schools this year.
That was on.
Because I know when I first started on the school board and Valerie was setting up, walks through the schools, I remember thinking in my head, my God, they must hate that. The teachers must hate, us coming in, or the administrators must hate it. But then we did it, and I don't get the sense that they hate it. I think
They wanna
that
show off the
they
great
want to,
things.
I think they want to, show off. And
Be proud of the work. yeah.
Right, I was gonna say that in a positive way. And also, you can't, we should be there, not all the time, not barging in. It should be planned, it should be, organized. But I would think that the teachers and the kids and administrators want to know that we're not just here on Tuesday nights, doing the things we need to do, and that we're really paying attention to what's going on. So I thought that was something
Yeah,
to
we
consider as
have,
well.
in our manual that we're supposed to do like a fall and spring type of walkthrough of some kind. And there was a lot going on last year, and I
Yeah.
absolutely, we did not do as much as we should have and could have. So I agree. I think I'd like to figure out how to add on to that goal, because that's almost like, we should be doing it.
It doesn't
like-
need to necessarily be a goal, but I thought it just, we
No,
were
it's
talking
something
about
that's important. It
communicating.
was commented on in the survey as well.
Mhm.
So it's almost, unfortunate that we have to like outline it. We
Right.
need to hold us more accountable to that. So what if we can, because I think it's important, just as the district now has, we'll have goals for the community, the students in the district. So I think we should also model, we have a community, let's focus on the schools. And I think it's okay to have that there. So maybe we can figure out not just the fall and spring kind of thing, but what else can we do that is more meaningful? So that we're not just having a goal of be more present, because we should be present regardless. How can we create a goal that builds on that and is actually, the district knows that we're,
If I
please.
may add something, in the Friday memo that I sent out to you with all the different events coming up, I'd like to really continue, and I know you can't make it all the time, to many of the different things. For example, we sent an invitation out to the board members who were available, because work gets in the way with your lives too. New teachers would love to see if you can come to that meeting. So whenever there's anything going on like that, I will be sure to send out that invitation to you, fully understanding, all of us understanding that there's times when you can make it and there's times that you can't. But as Carrie had mentioned, and Sonia had said that as well, they love to see you. And if it's structured and it's planned, in many cases, they love for you to see what's happening and to be a part of it, so that would be great. So that I can certainly be sure to make sure I send that out in the Friday memo, so you know what's happening.
If I
So
could
That'll be
just-
helpful, yeah.
Because I think when Carrie and I did the walk, we saw a range of grades, range of classrooms in the high school, but I think one of the things that really kind of stuck to me was we went into a classroom and they'd worked on a project and they were presenting it. And so I don't know how big of an ask this is, but if teachers know that they're having some sort of, like, it's a big day, this is gonna be, after a month's worth of work, we're gonna finally put something on display. If we could know about that, and there will undoubtedly be dozens upon dozens of these if this is something that teachers are interested in doing. And then hopefully we could maybe pop in, and I mean, it's, not a half day, not a full day, but even just come in for half an hour, 45 minutes and sort of see what's going on and let the teachers have the opportunity to really show what the kids have been working on and the successes that they're having.
Absolutely.
So then I think it would be important to put it as a goal. Like, I mean, we shouldn't put a goal visit buildings, because we
No,
should do that, but I
but
think to.
It can be more than that.
Yeah, and it'll hold us accountable because it's a goal of ours to make sure we're all.
And I think one of the comments from a teacher in the survey was board members, and I'm not suggesting that this should actually happen, but I think this supports this idea, is that board members should attend faculty meetings sometimes. I think it's just that teacher's way and maybe other teachers' way of saying, come and see what we do. Come and see what our challenges are, I remember, I don't know how many teachers responded, but I think, and they're identified just as a teacher or staff.
Correct, we don't know.
But all of them were, a lot of the teacher comments were along that realm, with my recollection. So I just think that supports the idea that they'd like to see us more often.
Can I just add one more thing to that? I think it's wise to take our Board of Ed meetings and move them between different buildings also. This way, we can let the community and, ourselves see what's going on in each building. So I think it's just important to get in there and that way teachers can prepare when they know when that meeting's gonna be held in their building. They can present those projects or the things that they're doing in the hallways or even in the area that we're, having our meeting at.
So I think, maybe like to Eric's point, if there was something, because you're saying like during the day, if they're presenting or the students are doing their thing, that we could come in, but a way that we could also then showcase it to the community, if let's say, I don't know, I have no idea, Michelle's not here, but something big that happened at the high school, if we held
Science fair or something.
you could still show up in the day, but then that night would be a way to even have students, right, that come to a meeting, and then if whoever won awards or something, because what we've done is we've had them come here, like when, or actually, no, we did have the robot thing, we were at, I think, Wells, for some reason.
Drove on the stage.
Yep.
But we probably should have been at the high school, right, because that was a high school thing. But that would be a kind of thing we could do, so we could maybe build, depending on the year, sometimes the agendas are just not,
Right.
will be here. But I think we can combine those 2 points where something big's happening in that school, there's some, whatever, accomplishment, and we can tie it in so that we could then, because I don't know that parents would be wandering around buildings,
Right.
but I think that we could bring it into the meeting at the school,
Right,
into the auditorium or wherever.
right.
So that could be another way.
And then maybe those principals too can pick certain times of year that are more beneficial for them to have the meetings at their buildings.
That's true, maybe it could be like an organized effort that works for a building to showcase and then to have, because that was one of the things that, I would like to see is students. And I know when something big happens, we'll have them come into a meeting. But I think there's a lot more we can still do with that and have the kids present themselves and be part of the presentation. And we do it a couple times a year depending on, again, something big happening. But that would be a way to make that more consistent, I think. Okay.
Yeah, we had a budget advisory committee meeting here on the same night of the science fair. And afterwards, we just all walked over to the school and went to the science fair.
Rather than just doing it there. Assuming that we can use the auditorium because it could
Okay.
be used for some, whatever else. Okay. So, let's see, let me just look at what else was brought up. Another one that came up was, and I know it's been talked about a little bit, it was live streaming meetings. I know that Jim Delore has brought that up a couple times. And someone's gonna have to tell me why that would be a great thing to do, because if it's live, it just means they're watching as it's happening.
Yeah,
They can't comment
But they
as
can't,
it's going.
but we can't have no access to them, right? I mean,
You could probably see what they're,
typing or something.
yeah, or questioning or whatever, maybe we could address.
Some of the budget meetings, we did that at, and he had the thing with him, so if people responded, he was reading it, because I know the biggest complaint of Bruce was, could you people please speak up?
Got
Because
it.
everyone's watching it, and they're like seeing everybody, but
Couldn't hear
they
you.
are hearing us. But
Okay.
then a couple of questions actually came across from people on there, and they said, well, what about this? And then they could respond to the question. It was a little bit lag on it, but Jim was there, and he was, controlling that aspect of it.
We don't respond to questions.
yeah.
Well, unless it's specifically in the, and I guess I would just have to
Comments.
check with legal, I mean, I don't know.
I don't think it would be any,
Because they come up, they address the board, they state their names, someone would have
They
to,
would
I'd
have
have
to
to
do that.
read they would have to, they just can't have a question, I'd have to read the name.
they'd have to
Live,
identify themselves.
correct.
And, right. And then,
So that's the difference between a workshop and a meeting.
Yeah.
It's different interaction.
Right, yeah.
well, I think sometimes the complaints about people not coming to meetings is that they're too early, I commute, I'm not home yet, kids have dinner, sports, whatever the heck it is. So then you would think watching it on video later is really
More
more,
sense.
But I think maybe the point
convenient,
is,
but they
but
don't
I'm
get a
stuck
say.
at, right, so, but if I'm home and I'm cooking, I can type in, I'm listening and watching, and I can,
I think as long as it's, the people at home are abiding by the same rules that the people who are sitting here are,
Always try.
it could be good. Yeah, we could try it, right?
I'd have to talk to
Yeah, and find out how
Jim.
the
I know
districts
he's
do it,
actually, they do, and I
They
know
do.
he's
and what the parameters are.
had the idea of doing it for a while,
Mhm.
so we can look into that.
And also talk to your attorney to make sure that
Yeah, that, so, does that need to be a goal
I don't think so.
specifically?
That's
I don't
just a
think so. I mean,
communication issue.
Just something for
Yeah.
us to look into?
I don't think so. Because that could be a goal that we could achieve. Achieve pretty quickly, just cross that pathway off.
Set three like that, we're good.
Done, what else can Jim do for us?
Can we do these meetings from our homes?
Now you're talking.
Technically,
Sorry, man, I got on my meeting.
you can be, we can. If you, just so we all do know this, if you are stuck somewhere else for some reason and you want to participate in our board meeting, you legally can, but it has to be noticed. So how we notice the meeting right now, August 19th, whatever, we would need to notice that, Scott will be joining via,
Teleconference.
correct, and your face has to be, they have to be able to see you. So your face, yeah, I know.
Gotta wear a shirt.
They have to be facing the crowd, just like you'd be so put you in your spot. I think Scott Dakin actually did it, and we had to like scoot over because he was back here. And I could hear him like talking from behind us. What?
Just a computer screen?
Yeah, it's fine.
I'm gonna be Skyping a few times, because
Yeah.
I've got a lot of conflicts with work this year. I don't need something like that.
You don't need that big.
Go on, put that down on the screen.
So yeah, so they can see you, we hear you, and then you participate that way. But just as long as it's noticed to the public that that's how you'll be attending in advance. Okay, so that's that. The other thing, so for us, again, with what's within our control and there were a lot of comments that were made, that I think I would like to share with you. I mean, if you want to review the survey as well, because there were a lot of
Yes.
district type comments
Yes,
that are
please.
out of our hands, but we can definitely give to you.
Definitely.
What's something that we can, I mean, I know this is work, but I think we should have something that tasks us with improving ourselves, perhaps. I don't know if we can put that in a way, but I mean, we have the convention, we have trainings, we go to West Putt for trainings. Does anyone think that there's a goal we can come up with that just holds us accountable to our own growth as a board and how we can do our job better? I mean, the district, they have their books they read, the committees, all the stuff that they do. But, what else can we do? Other than, we can always have more retreats, which are opportunities for us to just address ourselves. I think we're gonna consider later, our own self-evaluation and how we can do better at that. Maybe it's just, do we wanna do another survey with the community and, maybe beginning of the year, end of the year, or mid-year, end of year? Because you want to give people an opportunity to voice concerns and then see we listened, we read, we heard, and we're doing, or I don't know, just any other thoughts of what else we can have as a board goal. We have 3, there's 2 community ones. We have again, figuring out, working on the communication aspect, the summary and highlights type thing, and how we can fit that in all over the place. Eats with Eric. For now, that's what it's titled, won't be that.
You're welcome.
The external piece being more in the district. Is there anything else anyone thinks that?
I'm curious, I would go back to the survey piece, to just see where we are now. Like you said, last year was a rough year for us, again, and I think, let's see where we stack up now. If we throw it out in the beginning of the year, I'm pretty sure there may be some concerns.
Do you want to maybe wait till maybe again January? Because I think with last year, we have all these things maybe, yeah?
That'd
So
be
definitely
fine.
do it again.
I would.
I think we should do it again, whether it's a specific
Yeah,
goal or fits within something.
yeah.
Okay. Just something to bring up that was commented on about our meetings, that we look unhappy and disinterested at times. They should be more efficient and more about the kids. So your idea of doing the buildings perhaps could give us a way to work with each building to be more kid-focused, or maybe we can come up with something, it would be more from your end though, a monthly kids something where every building gets to present, here. So we can have some sort of quarterly buildings just for, some of it work, but whatever. We could figure out a way to be in each building, but then maybe monthly have some kind of kids thing where every building gets to then also come here and present. But that was definitely something that kind of repeated a couple times. And
So what's the efficiency?
The
Some of our
efficiency-
meetings went to midnight.
They did.
Because
Right,
people's topics went for 2.5, 3 hours. and-
Yeah, I think we learned our lesson
yeah,
on that.
we
One
had
in
some
particular,
bad meetings.
the state of the schools will be broken down.
So,
to
yeah,
various
First,
schools.
not knowing the system that well, but first blush, I'm just thinking maybe we can put together a very short, because I know I've lived through late meetings and we don't want to have to, because you want to be thinking well and be productive. Having maybe a short clip from each of the schools, or maybe each meeting, just have a very brief, here's what's happening. And it could even if the kids can't, because we want the kids to be home, they have a lot of activities, they have homework.
Yeah.
You could do a video clip,
Yeah.
possibly, I'd have to, talk to.
Sure.
And
And
just
have
show,
the kids do it.
here,
That's a
this
good
meeting,
idea.
we're gonna highlight CV Star. Here's what's happened at CV Star. Not real long, we'll keep a limit to it. Could be 5 minutes, but at least we're all seeing, here's some of the great things, and the public seeing some of the great things.
And different kids.
It's all the story.
Kids, yes, yes.
But thank you for bringing up state of the school. So early in the year, and even I think the last 2 years, I'm not sure, you can talk to Michelle and look at the last year's agendas as well. It was organized, too much was packed into one night, and it
Yeah.
definitely could have been broken up into 2 meetings.
Yeah.
Um,
In fact, my boss Susan Gavin told me that.
She already told me that.
Secretary's always my boss.
But I think
So
since,
yes,
I
so
think
we will definitely look at it.
since that meeting, we were
We got better.
we were, focused on making sure that, some things have to be done at certain meetings,
And it is what
period.
it
So
is,
if it's a
yeah.
long meeting, it's a
Yeah,
long meeting,
yeah.
and,
Especially at the end of the
You know.
year, a lot of awards and things.
yeah, I mean, there are just certain things that have
Yeah.
to be done at certain times. But we've also learned that if it doesn't have to be done, and you already have, lengthy things, that things can be moved. Because meetings should not be going, to 10:30 at night. I mean, it's not necessary, it's not efficient.
Okay, so I think we have some goals for us as well. All right, so same as you, I'll
Yep.
get more specific and then we'll figure out what board meeting we'll present, which business meeting we'll present. Good, anyone else want to add anything to any of this stuff?
Well, maybe it's a little off topic, but it kind of goes back to what we were saying about getting communication out there
Mhm.
and how, and highlighting, what we've been working on and, other people are working on. When we do create those newsletters, maybe that's something like high school, that could be a high school project eventually, where we have a group of kids, like the school newspaper or somebody puts those facts together for us. And so we have a group of kids that can actually take on that responsibility and
I'm trying to think back, because I feel like I raised that idea, and someone said to me, so I'd have to go back to my notes and figure out when it was, is that it would look like, because I said, why can't we just have like a board section,
Right.
meet the board, and this week is this person, or comments or updates and stuff like that, and that'd be the thing we send out when they make them. Because we're elected, there's some political issue with it, like, it's this kid's paper and we're putting our,
Looks like we're campaigning.
You can't mix politics
something,
and kids.
yeah, there was some issue.
So even if the
Yeah.
newsletter is separate from their
'Cause we're-
newspaper, like if we just had the same, maybe the
If they
same
just
kids.
produce
You're
it
asking
for
them
us,
as a
but it's
producer,
ours.
not to be, not to be part of.
Right,
Yeah.
they just
Fair
produce
facts.
it for us, so they get experience producing something,
Yeah, like publishers,
an
and
activity more
Right,
than a.
okay, in that regard, yeah, not part of their newspaper, but do.
a separate thing, yeah.
Yeah, we could ask that
We could look into
club,
it and make
you'd
sure,
have to
yeah.
see, yeah, because
Mhm.
otherwise we've been having Roses kind of check our language and stuff,
Mhm.
which
Maybe
we,
they could still check it after
The
the kids
kids,
have worked on it and.
that would be, okay, something, so we can look into
Yeah,
seeing.
I would say we definitely want to look into the legalities of it, just to make sure, but.
And it has to be something, it has to be something that the kids are getting something out of.
Right.
As opposed to, this is
Right, they
supposed to be
have a-
coming from the board, and now we have kids doing it. I just, it has to be
Delegating that
some.
work to a child, is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
Along with making
it
them
would
make
have to be something that's of educational value to the kids. Whether it's writing I don't know.
To Krista's point, like, if we talk about like those little snippet, maybe a 3, 4, 5 minute video before each, I would love to see a high school club that says, we will produce and edit, and, we'll go once a month into JFK and put, get 20 minutes of video that we chop up and edit into a 4-minute thing for the beginning of it.
I think it'd be great, honestly, my dream is like a K-12 newspaper that the high school does, but kids can, I've heard that the high schools love coming into the lower grades and working with them, and they can, do a little article in we have clubs at the elementary level now, maybe this could be one of them, that they work on their piece they're gonna submit to the paper that goes out from the high school. In each K-12, everybody can do it. Really be adventurous and have podcasts, because that's the thing now, right? So if the kids themselves were doing podcasts, that'd be awesome. We don't have Eric, doing them anymore. No one, I don't know who watched them, but if kids were doing them, that's something that would be huge. So I think there's potential in that might be better because they're getting experience and learning rather than just, our updates, but
That could lead
definitely,
to a
Yeah.
class or something.
Yes.
yeah. So, okay. Anyone else? No? So, thank you. We're gonna close the public work session. It's 8:05 exactly. And I just need a motion to close. And all in favor to close it up? Passes 7-0. Thank you. So we're done. Thanks.